This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
It's 11:08 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast in living color.
There we go. Thank you.
It's
so
our
much.
rabbi.
Yes, this is Rabbi Shafir Loeb for Congregation Eitz Chaim. Yes, your Jewish home in Port St. Lucie, Florida, right here on the Treasure Coast. And it is a beautiful Florida day. That is so large. That zoom in, gotta love it. And yes, I'm running just a little behind on myself, but I will be there very shortly. So, yeah. Such are the joys. Anyway, it is a beautiful day. The numbers are horrible. That's true. And hopefully that will get better over time, but I don't think it'll be very soon, unfortunately.
That's what a lot of people are thinking.
Yeah, well, we historically have, right, the Spanish flu went 2 years, so there's no reason to figure this one is going to decide to be faster.
And your college, and ours, because since I do IRSC basketball,
Yes.
is announced yesterday that there will be no fall sports. Everything will be in the spring. And
Okay.
that's a very smart decision on their part.
And also those of us who enjoy the wonderful performances in McAlpin.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I never even thought about McAlpin.
Right.
Sure.
The theater arts, the
Music.
musical, the
Yeah.
dance, all of that. It's, to me, that was one of, and has been one of the gems of being on the Treasure Coast. I was just talking with a couple of members in the congregation just a couple of days ago, and their comment was, no offense to Kravitz, but this way we don't have to always go down, right? We don't always have to go somewhere else to find the caliber of performances that IRSC puts on.
You bet. Oh, yeah.
That's a huge, huge thing.
They're big league productions.
Absolutely. They are quality productions. The students do an amazing job. And, I miss that. I was looking, as I think most, we're season holders, my husband and I, and some friends of ours. And, I was looking at the ticket. The tickets are still there from spring.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
They're still on the fridge, and I was looking at that, and we're among, and I hope that many people did that. Right. We didn't ask for a refund. We donated the money. It's already spent. It's not the college's fault. It's not the students use that money for scholarships. That money pays for tuition for the students in that program. So it's a big deal, and it's important. So yeah. I hope that a lot of people did that they donated the money and that it went into the important programs that the college does. Those are things that people don't realize. Sports things, those are revenue producing also, right?
No. No. They'd like it to be, but actually, no. It's, with the exception of 2 sets of games. One is the pink game for the ladies basketball team, and that's a cancer fundraiser.
Okay.
And the other would be the Veterans Classic for the guys, and they raise money for veterans charities. Other than that, all sports at IRSC is free.
Oh, okay. There's no sponsorships or...
No.
Okay.
Aside from, of course, we broadcast the games, but yeah.
So, all right. So anyway, the whole world is upside down and topsy-turvy.
Yeah,
right
it
now.
is.
And,
it is.
Yeah, it's going to be a while until things settle back down. And I was just talking with somebody less than an hour ago, or just about an hour ago, I guess now that the show has started, but a little over an hour ago. And we were discussing, how likely is it to have another shutdown? Because I think that, we're going to start to hear that talk, and people are going to ponder it. We'll see where the states go. We'll see where the numbers go, if they level off or continue climbing. And it's a serious issue. Again, people need to learn to wash their hands and not, the idea of having COVID parties just blows my mind. The idea that somehow
That's insanity.
this crazy idea came out that said, that if you're under 80 and you catch it, you're not in trouble. No. Clearly the numbers have shown that's not the case. The median age has steadily gone down. We've lost younger people to it. And I think the longer it progresses, the more people know somebody who knows somebody, right? So you've got some of that going on. And I'm going to ask if Carol could possibly bring me a tissue.
Oh,
yeah,
sure, we can do that.
I've got some of that allergy nose going on, so sorry about that. Those who know me know that's a common problem for me. And today is no exception. The breeze yesterday certainly put a lot of things in the air. I'm one of those good folks with allergies. So anyway, I didn't realize that I color coordinated with the background here. I could just blend in and be a palm tree. Okay. Gotta love the palm trees. Palm trees, so I'm going to flip over to there. This is, I'm going to get there eventually. I won't get there immediately, but this is the beginning of the Hebrew month of Av, and that is traditionally one of the really hot spots of, thank you, appreciate that, one of the hot spots of the calendar. We're in the period between the 17th of the Hebrew month of Tammuz, which is not a Hebrew name, but a Babylonian name. And Av is the Hebrew month. It's the only month that is a Hebrew name on the Hebrew calendar, which is interesting. So,
I thought Babylonians were Christian, or were Jewish.
Huh?
No?
Babylonians are not. Well, there was a big Jewish population there.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Since the exile, right? Only 10%. That's one of the things a lot of people don't realize. But only 10% of the people who were exiled to Babylonia actually went back with Ezra and Nehemiah.
Oh, okay.
So the vast majority stayed, and and it was a small group that came back and rebuilt the temple. So, and they brought with them a lot of Babylonian culture, just as American Jews who live in Israel are influencing Israeli culture to be very American in some ways. Because when you immigrate, you take with you the culture that you grew up in, right? And that's one of the challenges, right? That especially the DACA students are facing. They don't fit in with the countries where they were born because the only life they've known has been America, right? So they are totally acculturated in America. They really are Americans, just. It's a long, they don't have papers.
It's so funny. A couple guys that, speaking of IRSC, that we used to play against, they played for Broward at the time. They're playing in Haifa now, in the Israeli Pro Basketball League. And it's so funny to see these guys from the Dominican Republic getting used to Haifa. It's kind of cool.
Haifa's a cool city.
Yeah.
Haifa's,
it looks like a young city.
It's a younger city. It's a more eclectic city. Israel's not that big, but the cities are very different. It's very, America's become more homogenized, and I credit TV with that a lot. right? TV has blended a lot of. There are regional differences, and there certainly are local preferences and stuff, but the flavor is not to me, as dramatic between American cities. And part of that also are the chains, right? Everybody's got McDonald's and Wendy's and Burger King, and
Sure.
You might have some local, like we've got 2J's down here. Thank you, 2J's. Another great dinner with them, Third Friday. Last Friday. Oh, God, it was so good. It was.
Yeah, one of the kids he's almost 7 feet tall, but he's put like 20 pounds on since he moved there. He says the food's incredible.
Oh, it is. Well, there's a lot of food available. They have street vendors and all of that good stuff. Yeah, lots of opportunities to eat. And it probably is closer in some ways to a Dominican diet than an American diet might be. More veggie based.
Yeah, that's what they were saying.
Yeah. It's interesting that Americans that I've known that have gone to Israel complain that food is very expensive because meat is very expensive in Israel. And Israelis that come to America complain that food is very expensive because they're very veggie based. And fresh veggies are more expensive here than they are in Israel. It's a supply and demand kind of thing. So if you're
I think it was interesting on that pro basketball team that they have discussed is that there are about 6 or 7 players on that team that are vegan.
Yeah,
and
wouldn't
it's
surprise
like,
me.
wow.
They're going to find vegan folks in Israel. There are a number of them, obviously. There's more vegans in America as you move west.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well,
right.
Tons of them on the west. Just go right up the west coast.
And
California, Oregon, Washington. Yeah.
And part of that, if you look, there's a map. If you Google it, you'll find it, where it says the most dominant non-Christian religion in a state. And if you look at the eastern U.S., it's Islam and Judaism that are frequently, and the second dominant religion. And on the West Coast, it's Buddhism.
Well, okay. Now
so
that you say that,
it's going to have because that's the area where a lot of folks that come from those traditions have settled, and so there's a lot of representation. Baha'i, of course, in the Carolinas, but so there's different areas, different pockets of stuff. It's a very interesting map, and you can Google it. It's out there. I love that Google, right? That's a word to look for something, to research something. And
now a verb?
Yeah, it is now a verb, right? And it's one of those words where kids understand it completely. And
certainly.
And grandparents go, "You want a what?" Language changes. Language morphs and moves. So getting back to what I was talking about, we're into the Hebrew month of Av, and this is a difficult time. It's a very difficult time. The mood will start to lighten next Friday when I come back in, because Thursday will have been Tisha B'Av, and Thursday is a very heavy day on the Jewish calendar, the 9th day of the month of Av, because it commemorates the destruction of the temple. Ooh. When we're in the period now between when the Romans have breached the walls and the burning of the temple. It's a very bad time. The Romans actually laid siege to Jerusalem for years. Their tenacity at laying siege to a city or village, beyond impressive. You can go to Masada, for example, which is not in Jerusalem, obviously. It's close to the Dead Sea. And you can see, if you stand on Masada, you can look down and you can see the Roman encampments. And that gives you an idea what it must have been like for the zealots who were up on the mountain, sieged by the Romans, to look down and constantly see the bases there, and to know that there really wasn't any way for them to get out.
So ISIS isn't the first to destroy everything around them. The Romans did a pretty good job of it.
The Romans did a very good job, and they very intentionally they tried to cherry pick what they thought was good within any culture, and incorporate that and make it Roman and destroy the rest. And it was just and they had a really strong way of pointing that out to people, because they had a law in the books called Mageus, which was that if you said or implied that anything was equal to or better than Roman culture, it was a capital crime. Yeah.
Wow.
They did not understand free speech.
Where was the Constitution?
Yeah,
oh, I
no,
see.
that wasn't quite written yet.
Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of people don't realize how hard it was to be anything other than a Roman citizen. Now, ironically, there are many, even folks close to it in time. I'm going to flip into a little bit of early Christian history. When Paul asserts his citizenship, he actually ends up condemning himself to death, because had he not done that, he probably would have just been let go and not made an example by Rome. But that's getting into a lot of detail. Right, it's because they went out of their way in some ways to squash things and hide things, and it reminds me of when I used to work at Goodyear. We used to have a saying at Goodyear that if you're in one of the plants and you have a problem and you report it to headquarters, you now have two problems.
Oh my.
Right.
Okay. I get it.
Okay, I have this drinking problem here.
That is a funny line.
You like
wow. That? Oh yeah.
And older styles of management, and hopefully we're learning more about how to deal with people, how to work with things. We're certainly studying it more now. Leadership and ethics and those kinds of things are parts of business programs, but not enough. Not enough. We still tend to teach business majors to maximize profits and integrate their programs, their marketing, branding, and very often ethics is one of the last things on the table. It's like an afterthought. I'm not saying that programs don't require the classes, because they do, but it's not in the early stages, and that I would like to see change. I'd like to see a discussion of ethics early on that's me, of course. I teach ethics, so I have this bend saying we really do need to be aware of ethics. And we look at things, and deception is an interesting piece. Right? Statistically now they say that 1 out of 9 corporations will intentionally defraud their customers. That's sobering.
Yeah, it is. Well, and fear, I think, being the other. I remember when I was at ESPN and ABC had purchased us, and so we were doing our satelliting out of ABC.
Mm-hmm.
So they had this huge sign: when you walk through this door, you will fear for your job. They were the number 1 station in Los Angeles for a lot of years, but it was total fear. And they had news directors in there that used to sit there, and what they would do is pile up audition tapes, and they just stick them right behind the desk. And if say, you made a mistake in your story or something like that, they pull you into the office and say, see all those tapes? You make one more, and you're gone, and one of those people will have your job. And that is the way they ran that department. I could not work in that environment to save my life.
No, that's very, ouch.
Oh, it was terrible.
I'm sorry.
It was terrible.
People should not have to work in that level of fear. And I know that people do. There's a lot of fear-based corporations, and that's considered one of the contributors to the Volkswagen. That wasn't that long ago, right? The Volkswagen.
Oh no.
Right, that was
less than a decade ago.
Thou shalt not fail.
Yeah.
And of course, the big question is, how high up did they know what was going on? And I don't know the answer to that. You would think that it would go very high, but it might not. I don't know at what level it became sub rosa, right? Or below the table.
It had to go high. It just had to.
Some of it certainly did. Now, how it was couched is another, right? How it was phrased to management
There you go.
is another
Yeah.
key thing. You know, it's one of my backgrounds is in statistics, and I can remember very clearly sitting in a meeting and, you know, screaming that you can't just represent something with one line, right? Because numbers are never that clean. You always have to have an estimate of error, plus or minus. You hear the number on the polls, right? You know, I'll just pull two numbers, you know, 75 to 20 or something, and I'm purposely not hitting 100, plus or minus 4 points or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. What that really means is that the real answer is not necessarily 75. It might be 79. It might be 71. It's somewhere in that band, and we're projecting the most likely path statistically, but there's no assurance that it's anywhere in there. And that's really important when you look at things, for example, that compare males and females, men and women, because very often the error bands are so large because the data are so scattered that even though the averages are statistically different, they're in reality somewhat meaningless because the real numbers could be anywhere on the chart. The error bands are so high. And so I constantly used to say we need to paint the big line on the chart that represents the error band, right? So that people can tell when there's not a lot of difference statistically between two numbers. And I was shot down by somebody who told me that, you know, if you're going to present something to management, you need to simplify it. Yeah, I am sure that many a thing were pushed under the table.
Talking to a teenager. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Right. So, you know, so I look at that and I have to wonder how much really does get higher. You know, how much of it's clarify and simplify. The other thing that one of my bosses chuckled at, and in fact made him want me to be in meetings. We were listening to a report from one of the machine design folks, and I happened to have been in there because it was a tire that I was connected to in many ways, and they were giving a report on a different tire, and they were talking about how the more wobble in a certain piece of equipment, the better the tires were. And they came out of this conclusion, interestingly, by saying that what they really needed to do was tighten the tolerances because they were significantly connected.
I thought wobble cut the life of tires.
Well, it's not so much the wobble of the tire as the wobble in the spindle that holds.
Oh, okay. I got you. Okay,
and,
yeah.
Right, because people don't realize it, but there's 30 to 40 components in the average tire. It's not all just throw a bunch of rubber in.
Not just
injector.
rubber.
It's not just rubber. There's a whole lot of components that go into there, and so what that's telling me is that if there's enough wobble in it, that the builder can influence and make a better tire. That something is not set up right, and it's not just a function of tolerances. They were significantly related. The statistics were there. There was a statistical strong correlation. Unfortunately, it was negative, and that's the detail they weren't reporting. Okay.
Naturally.
And well, that's there's a kind of bias that goes on that you want to see something, you want to see that statistical thing. And they probably didn't even really see the minus, or if they did, they didn't understand the statistics enough to understand what that was saying because they weren't coming at it from a statistician's mind. They were taught to look for these numbers. they're high, the computer spits out that it's significant, etc.
What I am not amused, it's kind of sick in a way, on these corona stats. Very few people see how many people have recovered from this stuff.
You're exactly right.
And it's like, it's what, 90 some odd percent.
Yeah.
That's just hardly ever told.
No, the vast majority do. Well, I think the reason we're not hearing that is a couple of things. One, hearing that doesn't sell newspapers, sir. Right?
Oh, we don't have to worry about that. There are no newspapers
I
left.
understand that.
I get you. Yeah.
It doesn't sell, right?
Yep, that's true.
You know, right. You know the old story, if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can say that inside, right, and share that with the audience out there. There is a definite want. People want news that's sensational and extreme. They don't want to hear a lot of things. Recovery, very important. Now, that doesn't mean that some of those folks aren't very sick. And tragically, we are losing some people to it. But again, the perspective, we're hitting in the 90s now. I don't know exactly where the number is. Didn't get to check it in the morning. I don't normally on Fridays before coming. But last night, or I should say this morning when I went to bed, the numbers were in the 90s. So we're at the level, let's put this in some perspective. We're at the level of deaths in St. Lucie County where the COVID deaths, recorded COVID deaths, are equal to 1 day's average deaths in St. Lucie County. Right, so we're at 1/365th of the deaths in St. Lucie County now can be attributed to COVID. That's a significant number. It's still not the highest number. It might be on a momentary blip, but it's not, you've got 365 more times more people dying of a variety of causes. And I think people understand that in some gut level because of the question of how many people do you know who've passed from COVID? And realistically, how many of those folks were in the last stages of life anyway? Others not, right? Others cut down very dramatically at an earlier stage of life. As I said earlier, the median age is getting younger. So young folks are not immune, particularly if they vape. Here's another one that people don't, right? Vaping really contributes. It's a comorbidity. Mm-hmm. So is smoking pot. Any of those things that involve our lungs. Here's one that a lot of people don't realize. Using a lot of cleaners with bleach and ammonia. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right? You certainly don't want to mix bleach and ammonia because then you get chloramine gas and it's deadly. Right? We have people who die every year from chloramine poisoning from cleaning their homes with these toxic ingredients. One of the things that we are doing, because there was a study put out not that long ago, and if somebody wants to contact me, I'll send them the link. But there was a study done recently that showed that the heavy use of household cleaners is equal to smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
Whoa.
Yeah. The lung damage done by household chemicals.
Wow. And
that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize. We are doing things to ourselves if we're not careful. I sit here and I look at your cousin of Agent Orange over there on the table. Right.
Yes.
And you know that I brought in
the natural stuff.
Right, some more natural stuff, and thank you, EPA, for approving some of the natural things. It's much harder to get EPA to approve natural solutions, but they do work, and there always have been natural ways of containing viruses and cleaning. And, we've always known what to do, right? We've always known to wash our hands before touching our face, before you're doing half the things that I've done during this broadcast.
How many thousand times did your mother tell you that?
Wash your hands.
Sure.
Yeah. You came in from
simple.
outside, wash your hands. You're going to touch food, wash your hands. You went to the bathroom, wash your hands, right? And yet it's one of the things that people don't do. And if they do it, it's a 2-second under the water, and put all the dirt on the towel. I'm sure many a kid has done that to the chagrin of their parents.
And you're looking right at them.
Right, So it's again, not that we don't know some of these things, but we tend to gloss over them. And, those are things that happen. The other side to the statistics, it's going to be years until we sort the COVID statistics out. I'm sorry. They're horrific. We've approached, there's a couple of sites that give you the percent infected. Now, that's a misleading number because it's cumulative, right? So as you pointed out, all the people who've recovered are still included in there, right? So now we've achieved a 1% of the population in St. Lucie County. It's higher in the state average. It's certainly higher to the south of us and to the north of us. I very often tell, and I've got my cousin from New York watching, I'm in between two hot spots.
Oh, yeah,
right?
we are. No, we're sandwiched right in the middle.
We're sandwiched in the middle, and I'm grateful for that. I'm very grateful for that, and I feel compassion for the folks in the other areas.
And you look at the county just to our south, Martin County, which is a lot smaller than St. Lucie.
Yeah, it's half the size about.
But you look at those numbers, and
yeah.
they're almost equal to St. Lucie County numbers, and that is a real concern.
Yeah, well, again, I think when you get to Martin, you're much more within commuting distance to the hot spots. And so people are commuting more. You may have more people who live in Martin who work down in the hot spots.
Oh, you look down in the Gatlin area and see all the Palm Beach Sheriff cars there. I mean, Palm Beach deputies are living in southern Port St. Lucie and just taking the freeway down.
And certainly a good chunk of them are living in Martin as well.
Yeah, you bet.
Probably more. Right,
the folks, more affordable housing compared to the Palm Beaches.
Right, exactly. So you're going to have a lot of people and it's not just sheriffs, right? There's clerks, there's paralegals, there's doctors. Probably not as much doctors, but anybody who's not making the big bucks is more likely, as you pointed out, the housing is much less the further north you get until you get up into the higher reaches. So we are approaching, we're at about 1% right now. In fact, I think it might be 1.1, something like that. I don't remember the exact number. But that have been infected, many of whom have recovered, right? The vast majority of people do recover. The morbidity, there's two numbers that are used in discussing diseases. One is the morbidity, and the other one is the mortality. The morbidity is how likely are you to contract it. All right, and so that's the 1%, and then the mortality are the number of deaths, which, as I said, that's not that high a number. And we don't really know who all has COVID and who doesn't. Right, that's why we're wearing the masks. Right? That's why we wear the masks when we can't social distance. And if anybody's asking the question, in the studio, we are socially distanced. We're not sitting on top of each other. We have to move to get anywhere close enough to even hand something from one person to another. So we are distancing here. And that's a good thing because it's a lot easier to talk without the mask. And those are all important numbers. So morbidity. I mean, for example, Ebola, the mortality. If you contract Ebola, you have an 80% chance of dying.
Goner. Yeah.
Right? It might even be higher than 80. It's 80 to 90%. The vast majority of people who contract Ebola die. And it's not like it's not contagious. The reason we're not hearing much about it is because it's relatively confined. And the word relatively is a very tricky word. It's,
a lot of it's in Africa, and there's not much media coverage down in that part of the world.
Yeah, because people here don't even really know there's a country there.
That's yet another story.
Or actually a continent of countries. I misspoke. It's a continent of countries. and some of them have
You mean there's more than one continent?
yeah, there's still 7 continents. It's interesting. That's another one of the maps maps are kind of interesting to look at to me. If you look at the size of countries, we have this perception using the map the flat map that shows the U.S. really huge and South America small. If you look at a globe, folks, notice that South America is bigger than North America, and we've only got part of North America.
Try Australia, bigger than the U.S.
Yeah.
Sure, and yeah.
All right. Population density, not that high. Now, that's an interesting study, and that'll be something that I'm sure will be investigated in the years to come, which is the population density versus the COVID numbers. The higher the population density, the worse the COVID numbers get. That's part of why New York spiked, because New York, there's another great map where you look at the U.S. flat, and you see the spikes by population. And if you see the East Coast, New York's this huge jump up, but so is Florida, right? When we get down into the Miami-Dade
Sure. Oh, yeah.
and that area, big spikes. And so that's why we're seeing COVID outbreaks more in city areas. Now, the other part to that is the higher the population density, the more the transient, the population, the more likely to bring things in and out, because it's a trade center. As you become a bigger city, more transient population associated with keeping the trade. And that's why diseases have always traveled the trade routes. That's not surprising, because people who do trade carry more than goods. They carry ideas rather. That's where ideas have connected with each other, but it's also where disease travels. And again, this is not news. Scriptures includes many plagues that came through. Some are big, some are small. You have to really read the numbers, and all numbers in scriptures are suspicious anyway, because well, I don't think we understand.
Depending on the author. Oh.
Well, and I don't think we really understand the units that were being used. There's the word that is currently now translated as thousands may not have been thousands. It may have been groups, a much more amorphous number.
Ooh.
So when you talk about 600,000, it might be 600,000, 600 clans rather than 600,000.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's a very, because let's be real, Port St. Lucie is close to 500,000 people, give or take.
St. Lucie County, you bet. Yeah.
Yeah, about 500,000 people. And according to scriptures, right, 600,000 war-age males come out of Egypt and cross the Reed Sea, not the Red Sea, but the Reed Sea. So if you've got 600,000 war-age males, that means between the ages of 20 and 60, then you've probably got the same number of women, because there's an average ratio of 51-49%, and it's higher women. So 600,000 women, give or take. You have a certain number of the population that's under 20, probably another 600,000. And then you've got whatever population you've got of older folks. So you're talking something close to 2 million people, if the word Eleph really means thousand. Now,
that's interesting, huh?
And I look at evacuation in Florida, and Florida, whatever problems we have, is fairly organized and used to evacuation. And in the event of an
every year, every year it's practiced.
Or most years,
yeah,
many years. I don't know that I'd say. Let's say it in the time I've been here, it certainly has been practiced a few times, and we've got more than just one highway north. And look at how long it takes to evacuate even the islands, the outer islands. I just can't begin to imagine 2 million people crossing a narrow, open path. So clearly there's something we're not getting in the story, that we're not understanding. And I think it is the meaning of the word that's used for thousands. I think that has come to be 1,000. I don't know that it was the time when the original writers wrote it.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, I thought it was the Red Sea.
No, it's the Reed Sea.
Reed
Sea. Yeah. How did it get to be Red Sea? Now, that's a fun one.
Oh, no.
We've only got 12 minutes. We'll see if we can go there.
my
Okay,
goodness.
let's go that road.
Uh-oh.
We'll cross that water close enough to touch. So in the Hebrew, it's Yam Suf. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Suf is reeds.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
yeah.
it's a marsh area. You know,
Of
Floridians
reeds.
understand that, right? We've got marsh seas
Sure.
all over the place. Reed seas. You know, I've got one just beyond my backyard.
Mm-hmm.
They're very, very common in this area, and they would have been at where there now is a Suez Canal, probably in that area. How did it come to be Red Sea from Reed Sea? Because Yam Adom is Red Sea. Adom and Suf sound nothing alike.
Yeah.
So clearly there's not a problem in the Hebrew. The Hebrew is real clear. Reed Sea, Red Sea. 2 different seas in the area.
Okay.
Okay? Now, let's fast forward to the King James.
Huh. Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go.
King James, right.
Yeah.
So somewhere on the typesetter floor, there's an E. Okay? It gets dropped in the typesetting for the King James.
Blame it on the Protestants. Oh.
And it becomes the Red Sea. And that is so prevalent. The King James Bible is so influential and dominant in thinking that Israelis now talk about Yam Adom instead of Yam Suf when discussing the story.
You're kidding.
No, I sat there and I said, would you like to read scriptures? Open the book and find me where it says Yam Adom. And I get this blank look, and then they finally, I'll crack the book open and they'll read it and they'll go, oh.
It's read, not read.
Yeah. Right. You can see where the typo happens in English because the 2 words are so close.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah. And even I have made a mistake here and there calling it the Red Sea because it's so prevalent in American culture to call it the Red Sea. And, people are looking for wagon wheels in the Red Sea, and there probably are a few wagon wheels that have fallen into the sea off of ships or whatever. Wouldn't surprise me. That doesn't mean it's, one of the, and it, if it's a war, well, I guess the Egyptian war chariots would have gotten caught in it too. Yeah. But yeah,
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
That blows me away.
Yeah, it blows my mind to even think of those kinds of numbers going through anything quickly.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Even if you're packed and ready to go. Look at how it clogs on 95 and on the turnpike, and right, it becomes parking lots. I start using the back roads, and then the back roads become clogged.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We have stayed in place. We don't live in the evacuation zones, where our house, thankfully, is west of the turnpike, and usually they don't evacuate beyond the turnpike. So we're not usually in one of the low-lying areas,
Mm-hmm.
and our house is a cinder block, so that helps too. I'll tell you, that's going to be an interesting challenge. There's a thing moving inside the county right now of where can people shelter because of the COVID versus the going into shelters, and they're asking people to take in a family, to organize a system to take in a family if they're in the evacuation area. So we're going to see, if we have a hurricane come through, we're probably going to see a spike in COVID for families that don't know they're infectious coming in and sharing space with others.
Well, it's interesting. You say that. Ron Parrish, who was the EDC director for St. Lucie County, was part of the health department briefing at 3 o'clock yesterday that we aired. And he was asked about the main shelter for handicapped, and he did not have an answer yesterday. And so, I
There's it's going to be, I wouldn't be surprised if the colleges are asked to give some space in some of the buildings, but parts of the buildings have occasionally disappeared in hurricanes. Please, if we pray anything, it's that we have a gentle hurricane season where we don't have to shelter, and that would be really wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that, say, the Pruitt campus in St. Lucie West might not be a bad idea as far as putting people on the backside of the, campus there. Yeah, that could be one alternative. Yeah, because I mean, you can't open up the Fenn Center and with all the COVID stuff going on, and putting people in there, you just can't do it.
There's going to be a lot of issues. It's interesting because we've been looking at a number of ideas of eventual building plans for the temple. And one of the things that we want to do as a community is that we do want to have a hurricane capability that we can take people in the event of a hurricane. And I think that now, in light of what's going on, we're going to have to look at, okay, if we do that, how do we sanitize and keep that safe for the people inside it? And that's as good a segue as any. We've got just a few minutes left. Stand by for more information on the High Holy Day season, which is in September. We are going to be, we always stream our services, and we definitely are going to be streaming it. We're looking at how to do a Zoom effectively. We're not normally we fly our cantor in. We're not flying her in. We're going to Zoom her in.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
And we're going to try to figure out how to coordinate that and make it work. And
are you going to have anybody in the temple for that?
Well, we're trying to figure out how to do that, because if we do that, we're going to. So the requirements for anyone who does come into the temple is going to have to be that they have no temperature. We do have a sensor to do that. People are going to have to be masked. They're going to have to wash their hands in front of us. There's a whole number of things that'll have to go on. There's parts of the service that require people to do things, and we're looking at different ways of how to do that. I was talking with Stuart yesterday. Stuart's one of our past presidents, and so one of the things that's done with past presidents is they typically hold a Torah. And how are we going to do that? Yeah, how are we going to do that?
Thought about that.
And what we might do is we might stand the Torahs up on a stand, and then have the Zoom of folks virtually holding those Torahs. We'll figure it out. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, lots of questions.
A lot of moving parts.
Lots of moving parts on Kol Nidre, on Yom Kippur Eve. We typically have a wonderful musician who plays it. I'm thinking that I might ask that person to pre-record, and then we'll play that video of the music.
They can do live Zoom.
They can do live Zoom, but it's hard to sing alongside
live
I
gotcha.
Zoom.
Yeah.
Right, because I'm looking here what people and if you want to pan in on it, Cliff, you can show people that I've got both. I've got my phone and right, so and it's not because I really like looking at images of me, because I really don't. I'm not that fond.
So you got your personal Facebook, and then of course
right.
Cliff is doing YouTube in the studio.
And so I can see here, right? So he's got me live. It's the delays, I don't know, maybe half a second.
The delay is on the radio
Yeah,
side.
well, it's on the radio side, but there's even a slight delay onto the screen, right? Because I flip my hand and I can see my hand flipping.
Okay, yeah.
And, I get it immediately on this camera, right, my iPad.
On your tablet.
On my tablet, but the phone, which is what's sharing it to the temple page, is delayed.
Yes.
And I'll have to tell you a funny story out of that real quickly, because we've only got a couple minutes. But I do my daily podcast on Facebook Live.
By the way, I saw it the other day.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. And, I do that typically in my backyard, on my back patio.
Yep.
and sometimes I'll see something either on my window that I face, or I'll see it on the tablet, and then I'll go and I'll look at the phone that's taking it to the other site, and I can see it happening. Well, actually, let me back up. When I do the podcasts, it's on my laptop, and the tablet's the share, so I've got both images. So if I miss something on my screen, or if I barely see it, like a bird flying behind me, I can go and watch it on the other screen, because it's a several minute delay. And so we tried using Zoom to sing together, and it doesn't work because of the delay back and forth. People don't realize how much of a delay there is, even in a phone conversation. Right, and you certainly know that, because when people call in, we tell them, turn off your radio because
sure.
of the delay.
Latency.
You
bet.
yeah.
You bet. Yeah. Big
Yeah.
time.
So,
Yeah.
right, so there's that issue. And they sound like minor things, but they're not when you're trying to coordinate people singing together or playing music together.
Well, and they have to understand, like some of the big productions that we've seen on Zoom, those are all edited.
Those are all edited.
So that's all
Yeah.
in the edit room.
So
believe me.
real quickly before we sign off, I want to share Rabbi Karpov put up here another point that is important. Back in the days of the King James, spelling had not yet been standardized, and so read may well have been spelled R-E-D-E, R-E-D, R-E-E-D. So that might have been part of it as well. Anyway,
man.
on that note, thank you for being here. Please consider sponsoring Ask a Rabbi. This is Rabbi Shafir Loeb for Congregation Eitz Chaim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast.
You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie, on TuneIn and Alexa.